Hello, and welcome back to the High Leverage Actions podcast, where we help you find your higher self. And tonight we're talking about manifesting. Love these conversations when I'm not in pain. And yes, so manifesting, we did promise last week at the end of what did we talk about last week? Interdependence. And that was a good one. I really enjoyed that chat. That was fun. But that kind of tied on that we talked about talking about manifesting tonight. So I'm Kay Reeve. I'm an emotional awareness expert, and I love helping parents who are stressed with teenagers, especially with neurodivergent traits, to actually help their teenager with self-awareness and to get in touch with their own emotions to fast forward their emotional healing. Rory, welcome again, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, yeah, just wanted to say well done, Kay. That is awesome work you're doing. And I'm Rory Lemon. I go by Rory Lemon Aid, AID to help. And I'm found on the internet through that search of my name with the nickname. And I'm here to help look at neurodiversity and creative flow coaching for heart-centered neurodiverse creatives so that they can get into out of their self-sabotaging compulsive behaviors and thoughts and mental scatter and procrastination and perfectionisms that can stop all these projects from getting out there, or even just finding the voice to express, even if it's just to get back into self-expression, or to turn that into some kind of business, or just getting into collaboration, because things can be such a solitary work sometimes as artists. So all of that is what I'm up to.
Yay, great work. Amazing. And very much like we're collaborating here on the High Leverage Actions podcast, because we love talking about all kind of things to do with personal development, personal growth, and how that relates with neurodiversity. And for me, how it relates with neurodiversity and parenting. So we've got all kind of layers going on in these conversations, as well as our own lived experiences. And you could say we're here because this is what we have manifested. And that is the conversation of this evening. So, Rory, I know you're really excited about this one. Do you want to kick us off with your version of manifesting tonight?
Yeah, sure. So it's obviously it's an interesting word because in the rawest sense, when someone says, "Oh, you manifested that," it's like, what does that mean? It means it's come into reality, and so it's and so something's happened, and whether or not uh, how it happened is the debate, and I think that's the thing to sort of unpack here. The important bit is because people want things in their lives. They don't want the things they don't want in their lives, and they want the things that they do want in their lives. And often there's a struggle with changing habits or knowing what to do to make that thing happen. And so manifesting, obviously, sometimes if people talk about it from a sort of mystical, magical sort of how kind of approach to whether it's deliberate or not, and how deliberate it can be. And so we can look at it from a sort of very, very grassroots, down to earth point of view of I have the idea of learning to be a musician from a university perspective. I could go to university and learn all about reading music and all the different things about how to be a musician, and then I've learned how to, and then I go and practice that. So there's theory and practice with the process of learning and doing to create experiential knowledge, and therefore then arrive at something that we then manifested. We left a trail of what we left behind as well in the process. So, my point around coming back to a sense of whether it seems too mystical or grassroots, I like the idea of that it whatever you want to believe will be happening, as well as what you don't want to believe. And that's the curious thing here, because I would say I like to think of things as manifesting happening anyway, no matter what. As the thing of whatever we did before, we've got to here. Some of it was conscious, some of it was unconscious, and some of it was it just happened at me, to me, with me, and then I chose to react to that and respond to it and do something about it. So there were points in our lives when something gets too crazy, and we have to change because it just there doesn't feel like there's any option, or it's really important to something happens like a diagnosis, and it's like, well, if you don't start changing your habits, that could potentially continue. And so that idea of where a diagnosis is like a snapshot in time. A diagnosis is almost like a picture of now or then, and it doesn't necessarily mean um, everything to do with that picture. It's just a way of stating what's been noticed and the evidence. And I like the word evidence as well, because we find evidence for things that prove ourselves either right or wrong.
Yeah.
And so what comes back to right or wrong is our perception. And one person's right is another person's wrong, and one person's wrong is another person's right. So there's no real truth other than what we choose to what we believe is true underneath, or what we choose to make true for us. And that's the shift, is the sense of, does it feel different to what we believe is happening? Because then there'll be a difference, there'll be a resistance. Um, so to not to go off on too much of a tangent here, just to come back to the sense of what everything is manifesting, um, based on our choices, thoughts, beliefs, habits, actions, and all these things that we have going on for us. So it's the same as like bringing it back to the four types of creativity that I talk about all the time. Being that if we have a disruptive thought process or pattern that upsets us all the time, that we're reminded of, that we think we can or can't change, we're still reacting and responding to that, and then potentially, like for instance, an addictive habit that we don't want to do. There's something about it that feels good, and that's the point. Is that there's a subconscious belief it's good for us in some way. So we keep even if we don't want to do it. If we start to realize we don't want to do it, it can keep coming back, and we can keep going to it because it's trying to break away from something we haven't really someone hasn't got in touch with enough to go, "Oh, this is crazy, I really do want to change." So there's this potentially not wanting cycle is can create more not wanting or struggle or resistance or disruptive patterns or addictive patterns through to um what we do want. And what we do want is different to what we are where we're at now most of the time. So if I want to go to the shops, I'm not at the shops. I want to go to the shops to get an apple. I visualize the apple. Then I have to see myself going to the shop, so I remember to go to the shop. And that's where the thing of, if I'm visualizing or thinking of stuff I don't want, I'm definitely not creating the things I do want by spending time and energy focusing on what I don't want. So bringing it back to simplicity right now, to throw it back, it's just that idea that there's disruption, there's aimless, there's functional, and there's visionary types of creativity. All of those are happening all at once, all the time. So it's how much concentration we're spending with our focus on our mind on those things, and what do we create from it going forwards. And there's lots more to talk about, but I hope that makes sense. Just take that in for a moment and notice that all one last thing I'll say is all the things in this room is a state of ideas into reality. All the different objects were created somewhere, and that they're in this room because I haven't thrown them away or chosen to throw them away, because I clearly want them for some reason, and that I will use them for some reason at some point, or give them away. So that's the idea. Same thing for thoughts and what habits we want to create, and that's the sense of manifestation that's occurring all the time.
Wow, great intro, Rory. Like a whole workshop in itself. I loved it.
Well,
And there are, again, so many great points in there. And I want to give people a moment to process that as well. But if need be, go back and replay. You don't have to watch this just once. You can watch it over and over and manifest comprehension out of it all as well, if there is anything you're struggling with. So yeah, there's some really great points. When you were saying about to make something happen, and I think that's really, for me, the key phrase for this, to make something happen. And when you say it's all manifesting, the phrase that kept coming up for me today, thinking about this, was, well, you talked that up. How many times have we said, well, we talked that up when something negative happens? And I know Rory's always saying to me, no, don't say it. Don't say it. Say the right things that you want. Manifest the things you do want. Because the minute you say but or if, then you start to manifest negatively. So it's stopping before that point. So, right, I am going to go ahead and have a fantastic holiday, but, and then you want to stop yourself. Don't go past the button. And you've taught me that one really well this year, to stop before you turn it to negative. So that was one. So when we're talking about things like jinxes and curses and, all the things in the past that people have used as terms like superstition and so on, there are lots of ways in which people actually are quite attached to actually seeing or trying to avoid negative manifestation while not believing in the positive version of it. Now, if you're somebody who believes that things can be jinxed or cursed, or you talk things up, or, karma happened again. If you say these kind of things quite frequently, you are manifesting. How can we turn that around to positive manifesting? And for me, one of the other things that came up when we're talking about this last week is to bring this to something more practical to think about, is when we're thinking about the past, the present, the future. So the past is memories and experiences, things we've learned. Present is what we're currently doing and the choices of actions we take. And then there's the future. Manifesting is always about looking forward. You don't manifest things from the past, you manifest the future. And one of the things that came up for me, it keeps flipping into my head, is when I used to work for an offshore wind farm, in the office every day for about 30 vessels offshore, they had to create the ship's manifests. All the little boats and all the big vessels, they had to create a manifest every single day, so that the next day they knew what was going to happen when that boat left the harbour at that time, who was going to be on it, what equipment they needed, what needed to be serviced, in date, tested. Like, everything had to be manifested and put on a manifest sheet before that vessel could leave the harbour. So that's a way of looking at it in very practical terms. If you think manifesting is magical and mystical, it's not. It's as simple as that. It's making plans ahead. But it's also how, when we don't necessarily have clear plans, how can we use manifesting in a slightly more personal and more powerful way? Because there's some really great ways to use it as well. And if you're looking for something or looking to achieve something and you haven't thought it through and you don't know the process, then you have no manifest to work towards. So it's about, us saying, well, look, we're going to do a podcast. If we hadn't started by saying that, that's us manifesting, starting the High Leverage Actions podcast. So it's sometimes merely saying something, and the minute you speak it out, it can begin to happen. Or we can just deny it and avoid it and ignore it. But without that thought and that forward planning to begin with, it never happens. So for me, whether we are looking forward, whether you call it a dream, I had a dream this is going to happen, or a vision, like vision that one day I'm going to actually have enough income to actually buy a new house again and to have a new car again. And I'm, visioning ahead into the things we want. But I think we've also got to be careful not to misuse the manifesting. And there's a lot of it in the big money coaching and businesses where they say, stick a picture of the car, the dream car you want, and put it on your fridge. and that's manifesting. And I think it is, absolutely, but I think we also have to be a little bit careful not to overreach to a point where if you're not following through on the actions and you don't have the right support and you don't have the right interdependence and collaboration, then you can end up with a lot of disappointment. So it's about looking at the practicality of what you want to manifest as well, and doing it in stages maybe, rather than just going for that big fairy tale dream that seems way too far out of reach. And there are some good stories around this, actually. There's some people can really make this happen, but there's got to be a lot of intention with it as well. But for now, I'm going to throw that back to you, because I've thrown a lot in on top of that. But I love manifesting, and there are some bits that do seem on a higher level, but we'll come around to that a bit further in the conversation, I think.
Thanks for sharing that, Kay. Yeah, I love the practical approach to just keeping it simple. And um, the thing that popped up for me most just then was being careful what you want,
Mm.
because not just about dreaming into that thing. Because if you get what I like to describe it, that is talked about in a lot of sort of more therapeutic ways of working with dreaming into what's wanted and um, personal development to is this sense of psychological set point. So it's what we've learned from the past that we find evidence for to bring to sense of what is possible to manifest or and actually it's it's those that don't believe something is not possible that has them just see straight through any problems. It's when we've learned that there can be a lot of problems. Yes, it's okay to go through experiences that gives us a toolkit to deal with things that are tricky. Um, However, that could a lot of analysis and whatever that psychological set point is that, for instance, you can't earn a certain amount of money in a particular job, doing a particular job. And that we have to be careful of, or it's important to be careful of what we're telling ourselves only because of the past, because there's always anomalies around this. And as soon as we don't believe it's dangerous or difficult to go and do something, we could just walk straight up to it. Yes, we could have the problems come along in the way, but the people that are it's like they say the people that are crazy enough to believe something is can be true in the world make it happen. And so those people that change laws by standing up and enrolling people in their own vision as true visionary leaders are the ones that change things because they believe in that enough. And so there's this psychological set point we've got to be careful of, because if we go too far too quick, like you say, with this big dream, it is entirely possible, but not if we've learnt too many things that tell us it's not possible. Because if we try too quick, too far, um, it can kick back at us and then go there. I knew it. I knew that that couldn't happen. I tried it, but I failed, or whatever it is. The 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 other side of that is also that we hear a lot about society and institutions and media and all these messages that say this is what makes us happy. So we got to be. It's important to be careful not to confuse what we think will make us happy and then focus on that, because that one, whatever, like, there's an argument to say 10, like £100,000 or dollars or money, a lot of money, let's say, you give that to someone that hasn't made a plan to do with that money that will help them to do what they want, really truly want to do. They can they can spend it on all of the things that wouldn't or that they would not be used to. So basically, the money can fuel whatever is already currently there, rather than the idea of it, the money making us happy. It may be short-term happiness, but it could actually be that some people like spend the money just as fast as they get it because they haven't got the plan together. So that picture of the car on the fridge, whatever it is, that if that's really, everything that you need in life, then that's okay. But is there, and that's where the coaching and sitting down, and not just coaching, but that's really powerful too. Just the reflective practice, and most times it's difficult to get to that process of sitting down and getting into a habit of reflecting practices, dreaming into what we want, writing it all out, like you said about the ship, getting it all down as information, so that it's a real clear picture, not just in the mind, but also as a practical roadmap. Then then we can see it's possible, or at least take smaller steps to challenge our psychological set point without kickback too much too quick, because we can set ourselves up for what is potentially called goal trauma. And I don't like the word trauma banded about too much, but it's the idea that the setting a goal, and then if it's too idealistic, or if we haven't got it clear enough, that when we go for it, it's like, there, see, I didn't get it, I didn't get it, I didn't get it. And then it just reinforces a lack of trust in the self or beliefs in ourselves to make it happen. So again, psychological set points, making something true and valuable and passionate and purposeful for yourself as a vision, and working backwards as a roadmap is all part of it. And the final piece I would say around this is being careful of the how to. How do I do this? How will I do it? Because that vision can drive us without knowing how it's going to get there. So it's that sense of daily practice of feeling into what it feels like to already have it really helps, to be open to the possibilities. And again, maybe it's mental muscles to practice about staying open to possibility that is the important, not the actual click on YouTube and watch about how to do this or how to do that by people, unless that's a skill you want. And if you want to learn a skill, so there's a couple of parts: clearing out what you don't want, focusing on what you do want, what skills and actions do you get to get taken, and what help is needed along the way, but without the actual being in the problem itself of why is it not happening, or just noticing the emotional attachments to the things along the way is also really important.
Mm. No, that's great. Yeah. So much about this, isn't there? Even though it's a simple word, and there's so many ways to achieve it. But I think, like you're saying, there's got to be that connection between now and the point of manifesting whatever it is you want. And see, when I was introduced to the concept probably about 20 years ago, I was told, oh, you would create this vision board and you stick things on a piece of paper, on a board, and you put it somewhere in the house and it all happens. But I was never explained the practicalities of why, I thought I was being taught something that was supposed to be magical. I didn't understand the concept back then. And it took me a while to really understand there is more to it than that. And if you're dreaming into something that's fairy tale like, and you've been reading too many fairy tale stories, like you think you're going to go down to the pond and kiss a frog and find Prince Charming, you probably have been watching too many fairy stories. So there is certain aspects of manifesting that are just never going to work because there's not practical real. But at the other hand, very much like you're saying, like the ship's manifesting, it's also important, I think, that we're able to speak to the right people or voice. So it's got to be the kind of dream or vision or desire that you can feel comfortable saying to somebody, I really want to achieve this. Because like that ship's manifest, the person who sat and made that manifest every day didn't go do all of that work every day on their own to get that ship loaded or that boat. They had to delegate a lot of that work out to help achieve the manifestation at the other end for the boat to leave the harbour. So it was teamwork. So sometimes when we are manifesting something, we also need to manifest other people into our life to help us achieve it and not try and do everything independently, which is actually where it replays back to last week's episode where we talked about interdependence. So that's really, really powerful to tie that in with this as well. So yeah, I think on the other hand, though, there are some times when we can manifest something and say something to somebody and actually not expect it to happen. But because we've spoken it out and then subconsciously it feeds back through us, things come about when we least expect as well, because then we are open, our mind is open to seeing and receiving information that we weren't looking for before we spoke it. For example, when I was saying last year that I'd like to meet somebody in terms of friendship who I can work with for my business, support each other a little bit. And my daughter just kind of laughed at me and, yeah, good luck with that. And then the next network meeting I went on, I met Rory on there. We've ended up doing this together. We love doing this. But if I hadn't have had that thought in mind that I wanted to collaborate with somebody, I was really looking for strategic business partnerships, was the thing I went on the course for, which is where I met Rory. But if I hadn't had in mind that I was looking for strategic business partnerships, I would have just said hi to him in that network meeting and listened to what he had to say and vice versa. And, we would have gone our separate way and not spoke again probably. But because of the manifesting, it was like, right, we need to speak. We have a one-to-one. And before we know it, we're working together. Rory's published his book. We've got the podcast going. The same with Emma, because Emma's in the self-help bookshelf with us as well, who's recently done an amazing video on therapists and stress management. So I'll just shout out to Emma as well. So check that out online. So it's all about the stress that therapists go through and how they manage stress as well. But anyway, that's another amazing episode or separate episode on this channel. But yeah, without having these ideas to begin with and actually speaking about them, even if it's saying it out loud to yourself, like you say, it's that subconscious is really, really powerful when we get in there with it. And there are so many things in my life where I have manifested without even intending to, but because I've said something and then I've seen the opportunities because it's in my mind, that things have come about. And the same, that's the very reason why I'm here doing what I do with my book, my courses and everything, is because I was trying to create a way to help save my son's life. And it was through keep asking myself questions and telling myself what I needed to solve and looking at things and the outcome I wanted, which is a son that wasn't suicidal, a son that was happy. I wanted a son who could smile again and sing again. And so I had to keep manifesting towards that, but not just hoping and praying that it happened. I had to make it happen in between and take the steps to help heal him. And that's why I'm here today with my book. And for him, I just briefly show this, is on the emotional cycle diagram. When I showed him this and we talked about depression and happiness, instead of him being completely disassociated with emotions and having an emotional dysregulated reaction every day, every moment, it was like watching the cartoons with the cat in the sack sort of thing. And his emotions were all over the place like that. But once he had this visual, he could go, okay, so I'm here. I want to be here. I want to be happy. Now I have a reason and know which way to go, what actions to take. And in a way, he had to manifest his own happiness again and work towards it. So it's all part of the process. So it's how can we use that going forward, and what is one of the best ways to manifest, Rory? I'm going to throw a question at you now, or some of the ways you manifest.
It's a great question to be asked. Love it. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. I was going to say because to keep it concise here. There's just a few things that there's definitely something I can share about that. Um, I think also what I got from all of that was My little phrase, stealth care, is important. So we have healthcare, which is what we want to create for our inner resources and how an inner functionality, your body functions, and happiness and fulfillment with our self, and where we're sending our energy in our body and what we're doing with our bodies. And then there's wealth care, which is everything outside of us. So everything from the environment, the relationships, the richness of those relationships cause the wealth of of our lives. The money and the success of getting stuff is useful, but it just fuels whatever is already we're thinking about, or how we perceive ourselves, or what 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 we're telling ourselves is possible, or what we believe about ourselves. So, and all of that has been made up from the past, going from generation to generation, passed down, and also what we've experienced in our life. So it's complicated, but to keep it simple, self-worth is so important, because if we're not practicing that, the brain will find problems and then direct it back at our self-worth, and we make it mean something about whatever's happening. So if we're not looking at that and upgrading that consistently, or working that muscle, then that's the psychological set point that will actually have things come and validate that for us in reality. And so that's what we'll be looking for subconsciously. We'll look for, oh yeah, there it is again. That happened, and that's it always rains on my birthday, whatever it is. And so what about it doesn't matter? First of all, what if nothing matters? Because we will pass it all on eventually anyway. So just coming back to a sense of, what if nothing really matters? What would you do then? What would you, if you would come back to neutral from it all, and that you could recognize yourself as a powerful manifest of creating all the things you have happened, or didn't want, or did want up until now? If you could do that, then what would you do going forwards? So that's the first piece, is to recognize the self, fill up with care, and that's the first piece. If that's not going on, then you'll be often people will be fueling whatever's already there with whatever they think that they want, based on a sense of lack, if that's what's happening. If
Mm.
it's a sense of worth, then when it comes, it just creates validation for more approval of self of worth. And then it's like, oh, I'm already full here, which means I can then, now that I have this in my life, I can also share it with others, rather than it all being about, you know. So, so to sum that up, it's the self-worth piece, and how to turn that into a sense of confidence, is that if we can be confident that things that we didn't want happened, that we potentially created that somehow, then we can also have confidence for what we do want that's positive in our lives. So self-worth, confidence muscles are important. Information helps us feel confident, and taking actions to get experience helps us get confident. Those are the only two things that actually create confidence. We can't wait till we're confident. We can only learn things that help us feel like we know stuff, and also do stuff, and get better at these things by making mistakes and building on things anyway. Those are the two pieces. Um, and there was one last bit I was going to say before I wrap up on all of that, about the how to, and that is uh you mentioned about how it can be when you meet that person that resonates. Maybe they were also, well, not maybe, they will have, like I would have been either consciously or subconsciously looking out for this to happen too. So it was only then, at that moment, when we could both recognize at that moment that that was going to be great to do, And so if we talk about our what we want to manifest to the people that aren't resonating or don't necessarily understand or actually just disagree because they have not experienced that or don't understand it themselves, you're going to get an opinion back that's going to confirm something. Even if you're like, oh, I don't want to hear that, or I don't care that you don't believe it, it's still reinforcing something. It's still wasting energy
Mhm.
putting something out there and talking about it. So it's actually being stealthy, and stealthy care is about being mindful of where and who you're directing your declarations to, because it's fine to just declare on yourself, and it's okay to do half the solitary work is just as important as collaborative work. And you were saying collaborative work's just as important as solitary work. So they're both important. And if we're not doing that piece of on our own, then it's not going to happen outside of us. So the solitary healthcare is important first, and then the wealth care, and then working on the wealth care through the stealth care of who to disclose to. So I've said a lot,
It is.
and
Yeah.
that sort of covers it as the basics from my side of things. So I just
Awesome.
say that, it's it's sometimes easier said than done, but at least writing stuff out gets the crap out and also what we do want out. And so then it's only when we get emotionally connected to it is when we'll actually really take action on it. And so the vision board thing won't do it, like you say, won't do something on its own, but it is a way, a very good way, if it's trained and relatable. I call it
It's like affirmations, isn't it? Visual affirmation.
yes, and yeah, and I just say it's got to be relatable, desirable, and specific, specificable, and those three things are what will drive it. If it's not specific enough, won't know what it is. If it's not relatable enough, it will seem too difficult. And if it's not desired enough, then it won't drive us either.
Yeah, no, there's some good points there actually. And that gives me a point, a couple of things I want to bring up around that. When you're talking about specific, one of the ones I know of manifesting in a big, big way, there's a very rare one to do it this big, was Jim Carrey, who wrote himself a check for £1 million. While he was broke and living on the streets or whatever, he was in the worst part of his life, and he knew he wanted to go into acting and wrote himself a check for £1 million for when he had the money. And he did it, and he eventually cashed in that check when he was successful enough. But like you said, that had to be very specific. He knew he wanted to do it through his acting career, but also he had to desire it enough. And we know he did. He worked his butt off, whether we liked his films or not. Some are brilliant, some are a bit miss and take, and everybody's got different tastes. So it's not to say any of them are really, really bad. It's just that not all of them are for everybody. A few actors out there like that, and actresses that sort of give and take. Some are brilliant, some a bit hit and miss. But it was he had to desire that enough, be specific enough, and take the action to make it happen. But he also needed that collaboration of obviously all managers and studios and agents and other colleagues. So it's all there. And the other one is you were saying earlier about the other one is, I think it was Einstein who said to be happy. We were talking about happiness and what makes us happy. To be happy, never tie a goal to a possession or a person. So to be happy, never tie your goals to a possession or a person. And the other one that I heard recently is Rory knows who Simon Squibb is. We recently went to a book launch of his down in London. And Simon Squibb is a multimillionaire. And oh yeah, there we go. What's your dream? And I have my copy here too. There we go. What's your dream? I'm still reading it. But yeah, so Simon Squibb actually manifested that when he had enough money, he wanted to buy his dream car. So he had all the thing about the picture on the fridge and everything. And he thought once he gets that car, he'd be happy. And then once he actually went out and ordered the car and bought it, he said he'd only driven it around for around 3 days when he realized, but yeah, I don't feel any different. What now? And he actually returned it. He actually took the car back and said, I don't want it anymore, because he realized that the car was not what was going to make him happy. What actually makes him happy is helping other people realize their dreams, their goals, their potentials. And he's inspiring other people to manifest self-employment and success and etc. through their businesses. And so again, just recognizing that, like we said earlier, putting a picture of your dream car on the fridge might not be enough, and it might be very specific about the car, but it might not be very specific about how you get there and who's going to help you get there and why you want to get there. So for Rory and I, our goals are both around growing our businesses with coaching and mentoring, and we've probably got different goals at the end of that of why we're doing it. But the point is, we know quite specifically how we want to do it and why we want to do it. We're perhaps just not looking enough at the outcome other than to, I suppose, really financially to be secure. And, we're working on this all the time. So we talk about affirmations, but there's a few other strategies that people can use as well, aren't there? So we've done a lot of work on this year on affirmations, but then there's the EFT tapping. What other techniques can you recommend? Because for everybody, they might find a slightly different way to find that keeping that subconscious topped up every day might need a different strategy for different people. But it took me a long time to get comfortable with the EFT tapping. But when I did, I'm suddenly finding that certain things are manifesting quite quickly in terms of speaking opportunities and connections with quite high profile people and people with the power to help me progress my business. But they're things that I might not have spotted if I wasn't doing this. And so for Rory, what is there anything else that you would recommend beyond those?
Okay, yeah. I would just say that it is like finding something that works is the most important thing, because you can do it with anything, because we actually have the internal power to do it with whatever. Again, it's changing our belief system that's the bit that helps to get there. It doesn't matter what it actually is, whatever modality it is. So as long as there is something that helps us to change emotionally. So EFT tapping works on the emotions deliberately, and it's a very structured approach, and it's very useful. I'd say that's probably the most powerful one that I've found to shift out of and deliberately grabbing hold of the feelings that keep coming up unless we address them and process them and let them go again, and then pick up what we do want. But it is like what they sometimes call a permission slip. It's like anything that gives us permission to believe that it's possible.
That's
So, so literally, you could do. There's a book called The Dice Man. I don't know whether you ever read that or not. It's crazy. It's a crazy book. It's around the time of the 60s, 70s. I can't remember who's written by, but the guy just suddenly decides that his life can be decided upon by a roll of the dice, and every single decision is done by choosing a set of decisions on the dice and then rolling it, and whatever he rolled, he chose to do. And it's a crazy story, but it's really, really cool.
did something similar, didn't you, recently at 10 pieces of paper or something about
Um,
a project
oh,
to
that was the goals to what goal to focus on in 2025 was 10 pieces of paper. It was 10 goals, but that was interesting because that was like writing down goals that like dream things that wanted to be created, and actually over the 10 days before finding the last one, throwing away one was like a practice in letting go of something to make room for another one. So it's about making room for stuff as well. So there's so many different ways, like tarot cards, that anything we can make meaning of. I use these all the time. We've had a little go on those before. There's this coin here that is like that says call to adventure or refusal to the call. So there may be a reason why there's a refusal to the call as well. So, but generally we don't want to refuse the call to our own life's adventure. But the point being is that again, I could make a decision based just on what comes up for me, based on that. And so, um, my point being is that there's tapping, there's drawings, the vision boards, there's even just sitting, meditating, breathing, and clearing out the old thoughts, let them come, process them, let them go. There's yeah, breath work. There's um yeah, it's just there's lots of different tools, but I'd still just like to say that it's really about that process. And that's what coaching is really about. Coaching is a modality, is a really, when we believe we're talking, when we are talking to someone else, but it's also that it's creating a belief system that's really structured rather than trying to talk to myself. That's also important to, again, clear stuff out and do my own work, but how fast it changes when we're in a coaching that's open and honest and connected, that can ramp it up much faster and much quicker. So because we're really listening to what's coming up for ourselves and declaring it to someone else. Um, that's I think it's going to be a lot to be talking about. I think that's the basis. I think there's enough to go on there. Um,
Yeah, I think that's really good, Rory. Thank you. And I've certainly let you run with so much of it tonight because it's your thing. And I know you've certainly taught me a lot about manifesting in the last year. Despite what I knew about it, you've practiced this to such a high level over, I can tell many years and ongoing.
Actually, one last thing I'll say that it's that again, it's happening. So it's only that I'm able to put it into words to make it clear. But we're doing it all the time. That writing the shopping list is manifesting whatever's in on your shelves to cook for dinner, uh, or whatever it is. If I want to go to an event in the summer, I've got to make sure I go there. I've got to think about it, imagine myself being there, do the research to make sure that I definitely want to go to that event and get excited but enough to create enough motivation to buy a ticket. Um, is all part of the process of, so if we think of it that way, that if you've thought about something that you've wanted and you've gone and done it on off your own back, that's that whole entire process. If you slow that right down and notice what you did to get there, that's what you would have done. You would have visualized or felt excited or both about being at somewhere enough to take the actions and actually do whatever it takes to get there. And that's all it is. It's
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. And we definitely did a lot of that on that trip to London when my car broke down on the way, and we still got there, even though it took 6.5 hours to do a 2 hour journey. Um, but we still got there and did the pitch that we were supposed to be doing or planning to do, not supposed to be, but we were planning on doing a business pitch. And yeah, but yeah, this before we go, there's one last bit of manifesting I want to talk about. I'd like your reflection on how can we call this manifesting? I'm not even sure, or is it potluck? I don't know. When, for example, I was always that thought in my head that I would save a life one day. And then I ended up saving several lives over the course of a few years for different reasons. Not just talking about my son and his suicidal depression. I used to work in first aid in St John Ambulance, so I'd save lives there and outside first aid as well. But then there's other things that I was. I don't know if anybody else thinks this. Is there's one person that is so famous that if you ever had a chance to meet them, you feel like you would want to walk up to them and shake their hand and congratulate them or say something, just say something. And there was, to me, one person who was famous, not like celebrity influencer type thing, but somebody who was really famous for what they do as a skill, as a lifestyle, and was a massive influence on television for all the right reasons. And I always felt if I met them, I would just want to shake their hand and say thank you, because they'd influenced my children's life growing up as well. And I home educated my children, so they'd watched this person on telly a lot and were also influenced by them. But I thought, what's the chances of me ever meeting this person? I don't live anywhere near them. I've got no hope of actually finding, because they didn't actually do like in-person events that I knew of as much. And I don't know, this is never, probably not going to happen, but I always felt that if I met them, I'd shake their hand. And then one day there was this event that my managers were supposed to be going to at work. But on the day, or from the day before, it was the day before the event that my managers were supposed to be attending, where this famous person was going to be cutting the ribbon at this opening of a new educational place, that my manager suddenly had an emergency meeting come up and said, "Oh my goodness, Kate, we need to go to this event and represent the company, but we can't go. Can you go in our place?" And it was at this event the next day that I actually got to meet and shake hands, because I didn't even then know if it would actually happen, if I'd get to be able to speak to them directly. It was a busy event, but I actually got to shake hands with Sir David Attenborough. And like, can we call that manifesting at that level?
It's all manifesting.
It's, yeah, but it was just absolute, almost sheer luck at the last moment for me, even though it wasn't lucky for my managers, that something happened. And I was the one that actually got to go and meet the one person I'd always wanted to shake hands with, and say that I'd met them, and to say thank you for, influencing me and my children's education growing up through the Blue Planet and other exploratory programs. Was fascinated by them. And so, yeah, that for me was manifesting that on the higher level, the one that sometimes you don't, if you don't manifest, you never know what's going to happen. But when you do, wow, things happen. And sometimes we can't explain the process. But it still meant that I had to accept that invitation and turn up on the day. But yeah, anything is possible, but just keep dreaming into it. And sometimes things surprise you. Just sometimes.
Well, that's it. That's the idea that once you'd set it, you don't have to know how. It's the desirability was enough, the relatability was enough, and the specificity was enough. And so if you'd already set that out, then you don't have to like once you bought the ticket to the event, you don't have to then think about being at the event that whole time until you the day before maybe work out how to get there so you make sure that you don't get caught up doing other things, that but it's only the minimal amount of mechanics is necessary. And yeah, when you say higher level, that's the point. In some ways it's
Yeah,
not it's not graded in that way in terms of what's possible. It's only that you didn't if you'd have had a belief that you were thinking, oh, well, that will never happen to me in the background, and you may have pushed it away somehow
yeah,
because you just thought, oh, that's not going to cost me anything to want to do that. I'm just going to think about it. Whereas some things that feel like they've got a cost to them that we don't have the resources to pay for it, we're in a lack place. We actually could potentially push it away. So, so I would listen to some music and have an earworm in my head, and I would be like going over it in my mind or listening to it wherever I could, enough to make it an imprint. And then there's times where, and in the last places that I would have thought the tune pops up and I get to find out what it was, or that I find it on a format that I was not expecting or something. That's happened to me many times where I've heard a song and I didn't have the chance to find out what it was, but it stuck in my head so much that I eventually found it. I
yeah,
found a copy of it at some point.
yeah.
So these things, it's like throwing the fishing rod out and you know
Mm.
and not thinking. You can't think about, come on, fish, come on, just it's like throw the fishing rod out. You've laid it all out, and you just then wait until the tug. You
Yeah.
don't. They're going, come on, please tug, please, 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 please. That'd be exhausting.
Suspicion. never relaxed by the riverside. I've seen.
Yeah.
So for anybody who doesn't know, Rory is a music fanatic. He used to be a DJ, he's a musician, and he has such a massive collection of music.
I am a DJ.
He's still a DJ. Of course, you are still a DJ, yes, as well as all the other amazing things he does. But no, that's fantastic. And thank you so much, Rory. I think this is the longest conversation we've had yet. So this has been great. But if there's anything else you've got to round up for tonight,
No, no. Other than if you're watching and you've enjoyed this, what what have you got from it? Put it in the stick it in the comments. Is there anything you'd like to create that maybe haven't yet? And what we're open to conversations or just hearing what you got from it. So we're here.
yeah,
Let's make it move faster for you if you're resonating with what we do.
maybe you're meant to manifest us to help you in some form or another. So drop a comment down below. What are you manifesting? And you never know, even if it's not us, we might know somebody who can help because we have connections too. And like we said, it's all in the mechanics. And all the time you keep that to yourself, you could be missing opportunities. So let us know what you're manifesting or what you have manifested. What techniques you use would be great because there might be something else we haven't covered tonight. But thank you so much, everybody, for watching in. Please also remember to like, subscribe, comment below, and share. And on top of that, keep working towards higher leverage actions to help you find your higher self. And thank you ever so much for watching in today. See you next week. And we haven't come up with a topic again. Another surprise. We will manifest something.
Surprises. Then we will talk about surprises next week.
We will be. All right. Thank you, Rory. Thank you.